The first cracks in the polished Montecito facade did not appear in a tabloid headline or a late-night talk show monologue. They emerged, as most true ruptures do, in a private legal document filed in Los Angeles Superior Court on the morning of January 22, 2026. The document, a request for a deposition in an unrelated entertainment dispute, contained a single explosive footnote that referenced a sealed adoption record from Cook County, Illinois, dated August 15, 2001. The named parties on that record, according to 3 legal analysts who have reviewed the redacted text, were a then unknown 19-year-old aspiring actress named Rachel Meghan Markle and a film student named Joseph Giuliano. Within 72 hours, the story had bypassed traditional media filters entirely, erupting across digital forums and encrypted chat groups before finally crashing against the gates of the Sussexes' $14 million estate. And when Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, finally saw the full dossier compiled by his own security team, witnesses describe a scene of raw, unscripted anguish. The man who had once declared, "What Meghan wants, Meghan gets," was now weeping uncontrollably in his home office, clutching a framed photograph of his 2 young children. The source of this emotional detonation is not a disgruntled palace courtier or a vengeful ex-employee. It is Trevor Engelson, Meghan Markle's first husband, a Hollywood producer, whose quiet decade of silence has finally shattered with the force of a legal avalanche. Engelson, who was married to Markle from 2011 to 2013, has long been portrayed in Sussex-friendly narratives as a minor character in her origin story, a brief marriage that ended when Meghan returned her wedding rings via FedEx. However, new information obtained by investigative journalists suggests that Engelson's role was never that of a scorned ex-lover. Rather, he was the custodian of a much older secret. According to a sworn affidavit from a former university roommate of Giuliano, a document Engelson's legal team reportedly verified through private forensic examiners, Meghan Markle gave birth to a daughter in the spring of 2001, during her sophomore year at Northwestern University. The child, reportedly named Samantha after Markle's own older half-sister, was allegedly placed for adoption through a private agency in Evanston, Illinois, with the full knowledge and financial assistance of Giuliano's family. This revelation, which Engelson's representatives have neither confirmed nor denied in official statements, has triggered a cascade of legal and emotional consequences that reach far beyond the gossip columns. For Prince Harry, the revelation is not merely a historical footnote, it is a direct assault on the foundational narrative of his marriage. For 8 years, Harry has defended Meghan against accusations ranging from social climbing to bullying. He has framed her as a victim of a ruthless media apparatus and a cold, uncaring royal family. But the existence of a child, a living, breathing human being, reportedly given up for adoption and never publicly acknowledged, transforms the nature of the debate entirely. Sources close to the Duke describe a man undergoing a profound psychological crisis. Harry feels that the very essence of his life has been built on a lie, says a former palace aide who still maintains contact with the Sussex household. He has spent years telling the world that Meghan was abandoned by her father, that she was the scapegoat of the tabloids, that she was the one who was thrown away. Now he is being told that there is a daughter out there who was actually thrown away. The cognitive dissonance is destroying him. The specific details of Engelson's alleged exposure remain shrouded in legal confidentiality, but a pattern has emerged from leaked email metadata and a series of private text messages obtained by this outlet. It appears that Engelson did not act alone. For years, he remained silent, out of a combination of professional courtesy and personal humiliation. However, the release of several tell-all books by Meghan's estranged half-sister, Samantha Markle, coupled with the relentless public speculation about the Sussexes' marriage, convinced Engelson that the historical record required correction. According to a source familiar with his thinking, Engelson possesses a trove of digital evidence photographs from Northwestern University parties dated 2000, a scanned copy of a joint bank account opened in 2001, and crucially, a letter written by Meghan to a friend in 2002 discussing the emotional aftermath of the adoption. "He never wanted to be the villain," the source explained, "but watching Meghan build an entire brand around compassion for abandoned children while ignoring her own first child, that became morally intolerable to him." The royal family's response has been characteristically glacial, but strategically devastating. Buckingham Palace has maintained a wall of silence regarding the specific allegations, issuing only a terse statement reminding the public that matters of historic family privacy are not subject to commentary. However, behind closed doors, the mood is one of grim validation. Several senior courtiers have reportedly expressed a sense of vindication, believing that their initial wariness of Meghan Markle, dismissed as racism or snobbery at the time, has now been proven prudent. King Charles III, according to a biographer working on an updated edition of his life story, is said to be deeply saddened, but not surprised. The monarch has reportedly instructed his legal team to prepare for a range of scenarios, including the possibility that the alleged child, now an adult of approximately 24 years old, might come forward publicly. Such an appearance would not only dwarf the Oprah interview in terms of impact, but would also raise profound questions about the legitimacy of Harry and Meghan's marriage under certain arcane royal precedents, questions that legal scholars are only now beginning to explore. Prince Harry's tears, then, are not simply tears of betrayal. They are the tears of a man who has painted himself into a corner of his own making. Throughout his memoir, Spare, Harry positioned himself as the family truth-teller, the one brave enough to expose the lies of the institution. He described his mother, Princess Diana, as a woman destroyed by a system that valued image over authenticity. Now, he faces the horrifying possibility that he has become the guardian of a different kind of lie, a private domestic omission that makes the palace's deception seem almost trivial by comparison. A close friend of the Duke, speaking on condition of anonymity, described a recent phone call in which Harry broke down completely. He kept saying, "I defended her to my grandmother. I defended her to my father. I told them she was the most honest person I ever met." And then he just stopped talking. There was nothing left to say. The role of Trevor Engelson in this unfolding drama cannot be overstated. Unlike the various Markle relatives who have sold stories to tabloids, Engelson is a respected industry figure with no financial motive for destruction. His net worth, estimated at over $10 million, is secure. His second marriage is stable. The alleged existence of a child from a prior relationship, a child Meghan never mentioned in her countless interviews about motherhood, family, and loss, represents, in Engelson's view, the ultimate hypocrisy. "He's not trying to destroy her," says a Hollywood producer who knows both parties. "He's trying to restore balance. He's saying, you want to talk about truth and reconciliation? Fine. Let's start with the truth about 2001. The mainstream media has been slow to engage with the story, partly due to the difficulty of verifying documents from 2 decades ago, and partly due to lingering sympathy for the Sussexes. However, the digital ecosystem has been merciless. YouTube documentaries with titles like The Lost Princess and Meghan's Secret Daughter have accumulated millions of views, each presenting a slightly different version of the alleged adoption. Some claim the child was born in a private clinic in Lake Forest, Illinois. Others assert that the adoption was handled by a Catholic charity with strict confidentiality rules. A particularly viral thread on a major social media platform suggests that the child was not placed with strangers, but was secretly raised by a member of Meghan's extended family, a theory that would explain the long-standing bitterness of Samantha Markle, who has hinted at family secrets for years without ever providing concrete proof. What is not in dispute is the timing. The alleged pregnancy and adoption would have occurred during Meghan's freshman and sophomore years at Northwestern, a period she has rarely discussed in public. In her various profiles and interviews, Meghan has focused on her double major in theater and international relations, her internship at the U.S. Embassy in Buenos Aires, and her early acting auditions. She has never mentioned a romantic relationship with a man named Joseph Giuliano, nor has she acknowledged any significant medical or emotional crisis during those years. If the allegations are true, the silence represents a staggering act of historical erasure, one that would have required the cooperation of family members, university officials, and medical professionals. It would also explain certain peculiarities in Meghan's later behavior, her intense possessiveness over her public image, her ferocious legal battles against paparazzi, and her apparent inability to trust the people around her. For Prince Harry, the path forward is narrow and treacherous. On one hand, he could choose to stand by his wife, dismissing the allegations as recycled gossip from a bitter ex-husband and his allies. This would be the expected response, the one that aligns with his public persona as a devoted partner. However, sources indicate that Harry is no longer capable of such reflexive loyalty. The tears he shed in his Montecito office were not performative. They were the genuine outpouring of a man who has begun to question every major decision of his adult life. According to a private security consultant who worked with the couple until late 2025, Harry's been quietly assembling his own investigative team for the past 6 months, a fact that suggests his trust in Meghan began eroding long before Engelson's name resurfaced. "He's not an idiot," the consultant said. "He noticed the inconsistencies. He noticed the gaps in her stories about her past, but he convinced himself that it was just media bias. Now, he's realizing that some gaps exist because there's nothing there to fill them." The abandoned child at the center of this storm remains a ghost, a name without a face, a story without confirmation. No credible journalist has yet located the alleged daughter, now a woman in her mid-20s, and it is possible that she herself is unaware of her biological origins. The adoption records, if they exist, are sealed under Illinois law, and only a court order or a voluntary disclosure from the involved parties could unseal them. This legal reality has led some commentators to question the veracity of Engelson's claims. If the evidence is so compelling, they argue, why has no lawsuit been filed? Why has no criminal complaint been lodged for fraud or misrepresentation? The answer, according to legal experts, lies in the statute of limitations. Even if Meghan Markle concealed a prior child from the royal family during the pre-marriage vetting process, the time to challenge the marriage on those grounds has likely expired. The royal family accepted her as a divorcee. They did not require a full accounting of every prior relationship or its consequences. Morally, the revelation is catastrophic. Legally, it may be irrelevant. This gap between moral outrage and legal consequence is precisely where the story will be fought. Meghan Markle's legal team, led by a prominent Los Angeles attorney, has already issued cease and desist letters to several websites repeating the adoption claim. They argue that the story is a defamatory fabrication, a recycled hoax that first appeared on obscure blogs in 2018 and has been amplified by bad actors seeking to damage the Duchess's reputation. They point to the lack of photographic evidence, the absence of hospital records, and the convenient timing of the leak, just as the Sussexes were negotiating new production deals with a major streaming platform. From this perspective, Trevor Engelson is not a truth-teller, but a pawn in a larger campaign of harassment, possibly coordinated by elements within the British press, or even the palace itself. It is a plausible defense, and in a court of law it might succeed. But the court of public opinion is a different arena entirely. Prince Harry's tears have become the defining image of this crisis, because they reveal something the Sussexes have worked tirelessly to conceal: vulnerability. For years, the couple has projected an aura of unshakable unity, a fortress of two against a hostile world. The image of Harry weeping alone, confused, and apparently betrayed, shatters that fortress. It invites the public to see him not as a warrior prince, but as a wounded man, a role he knows all too well from his childhood. The difference is that in the past, his wounds were inflicted by the press or the palace. Now, they appear to be inflicted by the woman he loves. That shift in the direction of blame is what makes this story genuinely unprecedented in the annals of royal scandal. It is not a story about a family fighting an institution. It is a story about a man realizing that his chosen family may be built on a foundation of sand. The coming weeks will determine whether this story fades into the murky realm of unproven gossip or explodes into a full-blown constitutional crisis. Several factors will play a role: the willingness of Engelsson to testify publicly, the discovery of additional documentary evidence, and most importantly, the response of the alleged child herself. If she remains silent, the story may eventually exhaust itself, becoming another footnote in the long, sad history of celebrity scandal. But if she speaks, if she confirms her identity and tells her story, the consequences for the House of Sussex will be immediate and irreversible. Meghan Markle's brand, built on authenticity and compassion, would crumble overnight. Prince Harry's carefully curated image as a protective father would be exposed as a tragic irony, and the royal family, which is watched from a distance with a mixture of horror and satisfaction, would finally have the moral high ground, a position it has not enjoyed since the death of Diana. The tears he shed in Montecito were not just for the present betrayal. They were for the past, for the realization that he has spent his entire life trying to outrun abandonment, only to find himself once again standing in its shadow. Whether Meghan Markle abandoned a child in 2001 remains an unanswered question, but that Prince Harry feels abandoned now is beyond any doubt. And in the cold, calculating world of royal reputations, perception is always more powerful than proof.